Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, where today I thought I'd give you a rundown on the latest iteration of my SRU Armour. So my Armour from SRU is fairly synonymous with me by now. I'm sure you would have seen it on my Instagram or Facebook, and if you haven't, then why are you not checking those socials out? But essentially it consists of various helmets and a chest plate along with some shoulder pads is primarily where the SRU stuff comes from. Unfortunately, not too long ago, I probably through bad storage or poor transportation, I managed to break the armour. Snapped it in half. It's straight down the sternum section where the two plates meet. Snapped in half. They were free to sort of bob around as they saw fit, and it all just didn't work anymore. Suffice to say, I sort of shelved the armour for a period of time while I figured out what I wanted to do with it. Actually went out and bought some riot gear and stuff to use instead. But with the acquisition of this little thing, this of course is the SRU bullpup kit for an AR-15 M4 style platform. In this case we have the Noveske N4 installed. It sort of reignited my passion to utilise the armour. I think it came down to the fact that this turned up in a rather fetching shade of OD green, which once we'd built it just inspired that whole kind of love affair with Halo again, and the fact that this kind of looked a little bit Halo-esque. It was the right colour, and yeah, suffice to say, I wanted to get back and start using the armour again. But with it broken, I needed to do something. And essentially what that gave me license to do is redesign and redevelop the armour, redeploy it to a certain extent, because I've never been quite happy with how it performs out on the field. So let's take a look at what we've done, and then I can sort of give you the how-to and whys of why even this isn't the final form of this. I think there's still a lot of development to do until I hit that magic spot. As you can see, she is now all adorned in a rather fetching shade of OD green to match the kit. I've kept a lot of the black components and the black sort of edging and silhouette and stuff, just to keep it all tied together, try and make it look as authentic as possible without going crazy and sort of putting in all the shadows in the right places, or getting some like Brasso and stuff and rubbing it onto the edges to give a sort of tarnished, battle worn effect and everything. That can come later on, maybe once we hit that final form. But at the minute, this is still kind of in the development stage. So let me talk you through what I'm thinking. So as you can see, this is all now very lopsided, all deployed on one side. And the reasoning behind that is twofold. If you look back at old pictures of knights and paladins, if you're French and that kind of thing, because the word paladin actually comes from Charlemagne's court, which was sort of like the French variation of King Arthur and that kind of thing. I can do a whole expose on why I called myself a paladin and everything anyway, so but that's for another video if you're interested. If you go back to knights and jousting and, you know, that sort of battle ready armour and everything else, you will quite commonly find that, especially with jousting and stuff like this, the armour would be severely lopsided, much heavier set on one shoulder, usually the shoulder that was due to receive the lance to the neck and that kind of thing. You'd have a very sort of standard profile armour around, and then one shoulder would be much heavier set and usually have additional plating and this kind of thing to one side. And I kind of wanted that aesthetic anyway, but also, as you can see now, we free up the right side. Now this was always a bugbear for me, especially when shouldering weapons. Now if I bring the Saab back up into shot, when you have that armour on and it's right in your chest plate and your pectoral here, attempting to quickly bring a weapon to shoulder becomes tiresome. Essentially what it'll do is it'll either not sit straight and sort of try and jut to one side as it goes in. You're either sitting directly on the plate, which keeps it slightly out of your shoulder, the sort of pit of your shoulder, or it just wouldn't let you in at all when you found yourself sort of like just niggling up against it and twisting the armour to try and get a proper sort of shoulder and ultimately a cheek weld. We either had to step away from SRU's plate design altogether, or in utilising this lopsided design, just remove the plate from that side so that I could shoulder the weapon properly. Now in the case of airsoft, I'm not taking a lance or jousting or anything like that, but largely operate as if I'm right-handed, and thus you adopt that sort of right-handed stance. Then it's going to be this shoulder, this pec and the back and everything that's going to be forward facing to the opponent most of the time. So there is a sort of semi-conditioned logic, even though plates and pads and the need for armour is not in airsoft in any way, shape or form. It's looking cool. It's that cool factor. So as you'll see, we are slightly different. I've kept what would have been the sternum. If we turn this around, this is now on my back. Kept what would have been the sternum between the two plates, and as you can see, the sort of orientation of the plate used to be with this kind of, what I'm going to say is like a ventricle, but a lot of people refer to as the outward facing nipples. Those would sit outward facing and the sternum would connect the two. Now obviously my other plate is snapped in here and it could no longer attach. I decided to keep the sternum because it just looks a bit more sizable and a bit more bulky, and it's not obvious that this then was a chest plate. This becomes a shoulder blade plate, if you like, and this actually becomes like a spinal plate now rather than a sternum plate. This is free to move around, but I'm not too bothered by that. I mean, if it sits and juts outwards, that's fine. What I'm actually thinking with this in further development is to utilize this as a pocket. You can see on the Mark I helmet, which is still my favorite helmet, I actually have a battery pouch on the back, but I haven't bothered setting this up for the other two helmet designs, the Mark II and IIIs that SRU do. So I would need somewhere to store the battery if I was utilizing those for the internal fans. And my thinking is, rather than have it on the back of the helmet like that, I'd be able to utilize that section of the armor essentially as a pocket. So I could stick the battery down into there and have the wires fold down in, and I'd create a sort of permanent cradle in there for the battery so it wasn't free to sort of flop about or anything. But then it would give that a purpose. For now, it kind of juts out. I mean, it doesn't look too bad when you're running around and that's sort of proud anyway. Essentially, now the armor is all strapped to one side of me. I utilize one shoulder as a shoulder pad still, and then leave this side of my body essentially exposed, although not exposed because it doesn't look quite right, I'll be honest, if it's completely exposed. So what we now utilize is, if I can find it in my little bag of goodies, is this sort of shoulder shroud. And the idea behind this is, obviously, I've created a loop. My head can go down through, and I won't do it because I got my cap on, and then it'll ruin my hair. But essentially, this comes down. This then creates a further pad for my neck. Now, this is not the best at the minute. I've got rid of some of the extra bits that the armor previously had there when this was sat on the front of your neck. I never really liked it on the front of my neck either, because it would always jut up against the chin guards of all three helmets would interfere with this when this was properly placed. So this has always been, I want to remove it, I don't quite like it. But I've tried to utilize this now as, and I will slip my head through just for the sake of it, as a sort of pseudo extra neck guard on this side. Now, bearing in mind, I'll have a chest plate, a shoulder pad, and the rear guard, and this then sits as a side on neck plate now. And this comes down over my shoulder when it's properly sort of folded, over my shoulder and over my chest, and covers the fact that we're not guarded up on this side. It helps to provide a little bit of balance to the whole overall look of everything. The problem I'm having with this at the minute is stabilizing it and keeping it in place once it's there, because at the minute when you're attempting to run around, manipulate the weapon, that kind of thing, this thing is, as you would expect, sort of free to shift up and down across my shoulder, and occasionally it just sort of like starts finding its way down and ruining the entire aesthetic. So that's no good. So I'm gonna need to redevelop that in some way. I like the idea of it, but it's not quite working for me as things sit right now. There's gonna need to be something else working with this. Essentially then I pad out the design with standardized knee pads and shin guards and stuff like that. This is from a set that you can find on Amazon, eBay. It's more recognizable with the sort of Mandalorian style armor and that kind of thing, but these were essentially shoulder pads and stuff like that for that, but I now utilize them on the side of my thigh. They're quite good as sort of additional thigh things. I will get them sprayed up a little bit later on, I think, to match everything else. But for now, we've just gone black. Something else I've sort of invested in, which steps away from the SRU design. As good as these helmets are, and as much as I love them, they are bulky, and I kind of feel like they become a little bit limiting. In terms of a juggernaut roll or anything like that, they're absolutely superb. Being able to stroll around the field in complete protection, look badass as you're moving around. Certainly if I'm going into enclosed areas where they need helmets in use and that kind of thing, then this is still a sort of go-to option in conjunction with the armor. I could spray it all up, it'd look very cool at some point, but actually just having a black helmet, I kind of fancy either leaving it completely black and having like a hand of Sauron across the front of it, or even a sort of ghost or Punisher motif with the white skull or something like that. Just stand apart from the armor. It doesn't need to match entirely, but something like that might look quite cool. I do quite fancy a hand of Sauron or something. I think that would look quite cool. But I digress. I stepped away from the helmet for outdoor play or any other scenarios. I want more freedom of head movement. I want more visibility than all of them provide. I invested in, you would have seen this on TikTok and all the rest of it. This is a mask that actually is like a lower face mask, and it comes complete with like a perspex shroud that comes up. Now you cannot use that for airsoft. It isn't in any way viably tested for airsoft use. So I still wear proper glasses with this and all the rest of it, but essentially this is a lower face mask that now sort of ties in, I think, now it's all painted up, I think it ties in rather nicely with the overall motif. This provides me with more viability, more movement, actually more ability to cheek weld as well, even though it's not a true cheek weld because it's not flat on my cheek, but it's certainly a lot better than using any of those. Now, the reason this isn't the final form and I'm not going to heavily paint everything is because ultimately I'm still not 100% happy with any of this. I can now shoulder weld a weapon properly. I do have more visibility, more mobility to a degree, but there's still, certainly in terms of the neck guard, certainly in terms of the actual shoulder as well, this is still free to move too much during game. And of course then it will like slam against the shoulder or the back. I need to come up with a way to properly limit the mobility of this shoulder and stop it being able to, essentially what it does is it has a tendency to either slack and creep forward or start folding backward depending upon my movement at the time. Same with the shoulder, like I say, and other various little bits where it's just not quite right. Look, I had a good conversation with name's Nico at the weekend. I was lucky enough to interview him for the podcast. And one thing that really struck me, and I will link once it's up, because I'm going to put those videos up later on in the week, but we had a good conversation about movement in Airsoft, how he actually plays Airsoft. Did his skills from the army transition across, or has he got a playing style that's perhaps more akin to playing a video game and that sort of thing? And it really did sort of inspire me to invest more time in movement and that sort of mentality. And if you can hear anything in the background, it is my dog who is now snoring. I'll just let you soak that in for a second. There she is. Essentially, I want more movement. Mobility has become a big focus of mine since developing this. I'm going to call it the phase 3, maybe. I originally got the Armour, then I did some development on the Armour, and now this is more development. So I suppose this is iteration 3. In iteration 4, there needs to be even more focus on quickness of movement. And for me, there's still a bit too cumbersome nature to all of this. I want to slim it down a little bit. It doesn't look heavy set enough anyway to be like Titan armor or anything like that or anything. I think it's more that kind of hunter-esque scout sort of setup. It's not a heavy duty Master Chief setup or anything like that. That's where we are at the minute. I think we'll stick with the one shoulder. I think we'll stick with the one-sided, lopsided loadout. I do like that. It's certainly made sort of manual of arms weaponry a lot easier. I need to sort of experiment with my battle belt as well, and how we, or war belt depending on your preference, and how we sort of utilize that loadout. Also, I was lucky enough to speak to Silo, who was down as well. Silo Entertainment, name dropping all the names today, but Silo's utilizing sort of exoskeleton legs at the minute. Now that's probably far beyond me in terms of cost and setup and all the rest of it, but it's interesting, and it interests me in how all of this, and how even he prioritizes mobility and the ability to sprint across fields, carry large weights and all the rest of it. So yeah, certainly how I load this kit out and how I utilize this armor is going to be important going forward. So watch this space, keep an eye out for version 4, or the Mark IV, we'll call it. We'll go a bit Iron Man with it. The Mark IV armor setup. This is the Mark III. I hope you've enjoyed this sort of waffling look at my setup now. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one, guys.